It started out as a dream home, a beautiful barn conversion hidden in the Welsh countryside. Cheap rent, space for kids to play and grow up, and just all around, the fresh start that this family desperately needed. But within months, the family's dream turned into a living nightmare for 6 torturous years. Thundering footsteps when you're all alone in the house, doors violently slamming right next to you, towering shadow figures gliding through walls, animals turning savage, and electricity bills running into the thousands with no explanation. This family claimed that they were targeted, hunted, tormented, and very nearly destroyed by something that they called pure evil. And some say, in at least one way, it succeeded. Because at Heol Fanog, sometimes called the Welsh Amityville, terrifying questions still remain. Was this just a haunting? Or was it something far older and far darker? And is it still there, waiting for its next victim? I really hope you are ready for this. This story actually gave me nightmares. It has been a long time since I've been so affected by a story, and this is just me researching it. It wouldn't have even come close to what the Rich family went through, living this waking nightmare for 6 years, from May 1989 to June 1995. And knowing what I know now, I can absolutely see why this was nicknamed the Welsh Amityville, after the Amityville house in New York. But it's also known as the most exorcised house in Britain, for reasons which I'm sure you can guess, but will eventually become clear. But the story of Heol Fanog and the Riches starts just like any other classic horror movie. Bill Rich, a painter from England, his Welsh girlfriend at the time, Liz, who was 3 months pregnant with their first baby, and 14-year-old Lawrence, Bill's son from his first marriage, they'd all landed themselves what they thought was going to be their dream family home, out in the Welsh countryside, hidden away near the Brecon Beacons National Park. They were really looking forward to the future, about raising their family in this gorgeous house that they'd found, where rent was £50 a week. It was a vast improvement from Bill's old house, which was a small terrace, which was also the house that he'd lived in with his first wife before she'd run off with another man, so, you know, bad memories tied to the old place too. Heol Fanog was going to be just what they needed. A fresh start, a clean slate, and they were so ready for it. There had been a bit of a transition period between the previous tenant moving out and them moving in, and so while they were waiting for their move-in date, they had visited their future home, sat in the garden in the sunshine, just envisioning their future there. This could have very easily have been their forever family home. They were so in love with it. When the official move-in date finally came around, the family loaded up their car and headed to Heol Fanog, and it was a gorgeous sunny day in May 1989. Lawrence went running off around the garden, and Liz actually turned to Bill and remarked at how it truly felt like they were at home. It was like there was a big dome, a big bubble around Heol Fanog, protecting them. You couldn't hear anything but the birds, there was no one around for miles, it was just pure bliss. The closest neighbours were farmers, miles off, because this is what this land had been for so long. And way back in the day, it had all belonged to a manor house, the original Heol Fanog, which dated all the way back to medieval times. That place was long gone now, just ruins, and they sat right around the corner from where the Riches were moving in. But their house had once been the barn for the manor, and at some point in the 20th century, it had been converted into a farmhouse. Using some very important stones from the manor house itself, but we will come back to that. And those first few months as the Riches were organising and redecorating and just settling in, they were living an absolute dream come true. They got married on the 28th of September, and all around it was a great day. Lawrence handled it well, seeing his dad get married to another woman. The in-laws all behaved themselves. Everything was really good. And back at home, they went all in on the whole escape to the country thing and started collecting animals. And I mean, you've got a bit of land and a little barn in the middle of nowhere. That is exactly what I would do. They started with a pig named Lucinda Ragwort Rigland, and then got themselves a couple of sheep to help with keeping the grass down. These sheep actually disappeared overnight one night though. No explanation, which, yeah, it could be strange, but also it's Wales. Did they just run off and end up joining another flock from one of the nearby farms. When I worked on a farm, we'd count the sheep, obviously, in the field, but if you ended up with a number higher than you should have, well, that was a good day in the office. It just meant you must have counted someone twice, so they must all be there. But after the sheep had gone, they decided to go for goats instead, and so they had this proper little small holding going on. But as the night started drawing in, and you couldn't quite spend all of your time outside enjoying the sunshine anymore, it was time to start preparing for their first winter at Heol Fanog. But then, on the 20th of October 1989, Liz gave birth to their son, Ben. He'd had some really serious complications when he was born, so they had to spend quite a lot of time in hospital afterwards, but he pulled through, made a full recovery, and eventually they were allowed home. And as they started to settle into life as a family of 4, everything was still all fine, all great. Until one night, it wasn't. Bill and Liz had had some mum and dad time late one night, and as Bill went to the bathroom afterwards for a wee, kind of half dozy, something snapped him wide awake because he started hearing thunderous footsteps slamming up and down the hallway. Now, Lawrence and Liz didn't have a perfect relationship, but as far as stepmother-stepson goes, it was fine, cordial, civil. But immediately, Bill's mind goes to, oh no, Lawrence just heard what we did, made him feel icky, and he's 14 years old, so there's going to be some big feelings that go along with that anyway. And so now he's just acting out, just making sure that I know that he knows. So Bill, he finished up in the bathroom and just went to Lawrence's room, like, let's just have this out now and get it all sorted. He opened Lawrence's door to see the room in pitch darkness. There was a heap in the centre of the bed, gently moving, with quiet, even breaths. Lawrence clearly wasn't pretending or anything. He was fast asleep in bed. Which on one hand, great that I haven't upset my son, but also, what was that stomping around the house? And that thought just made Bill feel even worse. He walked back to the bedroom, about to go and talk to Liz about what these footsteps were, because surely she would have heard them, to find her just feeding Ben, calm as anything, because she hadn't heard anything. It was only Bill who had heard the footsteps. But after that night, the whole house changed. The next morning, it was sort of like this fog had just fallen over everybody. Everyone seemed to be in a bit of a mood. Nothing outrageous, but just off. Lawrence woke up a completely different person though. Like, yeah, maybe he's just being a teenager, doing teenagery things, but his mood and how bad it was had Bill convinced that, okay, maybe he had heard us last night. Because Lawrence was just absolutely seething. Bill tried to shake it off though, and Liz did her best to smooth everything over. It was just a bad night, but it wasn't long before she would experience something in the house. Really, not long at all. That same afternoon, as she was in the bedroom, again feeding Ben, she heard a door slam down the hallway. Okay, seems like Lawrence is still in his mood, fine. There were no footsteps after that though, and then there was another door further up the hallway, slam, louder, closer to her this time. But before she even had time to process it, Liz watched as her own bedroom door snapped shut with an almighty thud that made her jump out of her skin, leaving her there sitting on the bed with the baby, who's in absolute fits of tears now, obviously, with this loud noise, thinking what on earth just happened. And immediately, this isn't how usual poltergeist cases start. Yeah, okay, they usually start with a teenager reaching puberty in the house, turmoil, which, yes, stepbrother has just been born and whatnot, are you going to be feeling pushed out and all of that? But to go straight in with activity like this, they normally start small, footsteps here and there, building up over a matter of weeks. The way that door slammed shut right in front of Liz, this wasn't any old entity. This wasn't a gentle escalation of activity. This thing woke up and chose violence. But it was only going to get worse. The whole family would experience extreme cold spots, but then also extreme heat. As in, they'd be in the kitchen sweltering, even though the central heating was off and there was snow on the ground outside. But then there were also these choking smells. One minute, the horrific stench of sulphur that just invades your nostrils, but the next, the sickly sweet, cloying smell of incense. Any random time, disappearing as quickly as it had come on. The footsteps were still there too, sometimes those same heavy, menacing booted steps that Bill had heard, but then other times, these gentler, quieter steps that sounded like someone in slippers was just mooching about. All of this absolutely terrified the Riches though. They couldn't figure out what was going on. What had happened to their sanctuary that they had moved into just a few short months ago? Because it felt so far removed from that protective little bubble that Liz couldn't wait to get inside when they'd first moved in. It had now been replaced with this heavy presence in the house, and it was not welcoming. You know when you walk into a local pub that's not your own, and is a proper old boozer, and all the locals stop their conversations and turn to look at you? That level of discomfort, that you shouldn't be here, but just turned all the way up. But very quickly, what was going on in that house wouldn't just be sounds or sensations. It would soon turn into real-world consequences, because something they'd noticed about their electricity meter was that it was just whirring out of control, spinning around and around. But weirdly, it seemed so much worse when there was something unexplained going on in the house. As if something, whatever it was drawing the electricity as power. And when that first electricity bill dropped on their doormat, well, Bill opened it up to see that their electricity had cost them £750 for just 3 months usage, which is almost £2,000 in today's money. For 3 months of electricity. That should have been impossible. The amount of kettles that you'd have had to have boiled, of washing machine cycles, of tumble dryer loads running constantly at all hours, to even get close to that, it just wasn't feasible. The electricity company confirmed that, yeah, it looks high, but that's the meter reading and you're gonna have to pay it. Young family, newly renting this house? Absolutely not. You need to send a guy out to check this over because we are not paying this. And on threat of Bill withholding payment, they did actually send someone out to have a look, but even that guy couldn't explain it. Everything was working fine with the meter. They turned everything off in the house and it was still whirring around. But he checked to see if anyone was stealing their electricity. No evidence of that, no tampering, nothing. Unfortunately, the meter guy couldn't put supernatural reasons down as an explanation as to what was going on with the meter. Not opening that can of worms, so there was nothing that he could do, and the electricity company wanted paying. What was super interesting though was that it wasn't just the electric meter that was going haywire. Whenever the family car was parked outside the front of the house, the battery would completely drain, even though it had been fine before. Could be a coincidence, dodgy battery or whatever, but it does make you wonder, doesn't it? But as if having to deal with whatever was going on in the house, plus then having to fight the electricity company on top of that, as if all of that wasn't enough. It really just overall felt like the Riches family look, fortunes, all general life had been completely flipped on its head. Bill's work completely dried up. Clients started pulling out of contracts. Prospects seemed to forget who he was, and yeah, while there was a recession on at the time and art is a pretty considered luxury purchase, even samples that Bill would send out, they got inexplicably lost, never even made it to the prospects. And just in general, it became a case of if something can go wrong, you could guarantee that it was going to go wrong. Redecorating, getting to an appointment on time, buying your favourite shampoo in the shop. It was less random bad luck and more like, you can guarantee this isn't going to go the way I want it to. Something bad is out to get us. The changes in Lawrence were getting more and more intense too. And I can understand a 14-year-old boy going through a heck of a time, moving house with his dad and dad's new wife. They've just had a kid together, and that's a tough adjustment for any kid. But he was becoming more and more feral, basically. Bill and Liz thought it might be nice to give him some sort of feeling of control about the whole situation. And so they let him redecorate his bedroom, but pick out the colour. And he chose a deep, ominous crimson red. Didn't want help painting it either, he just slapped that all on the walls himself. In fairness, if I'd have had that choice at his age, I would have chosen to paint absolutely every surface black. My parents did not give me that choice, and so instead I plastered the walls with Kerrang! Magazine cutouts to create my own Batcave / shrine to every frontman of early 2010 metalcore bands. But he would stay up all night, blaring more and more grotesque horror movies with his TV. Nothing Bill or Liz could do was getting through to him, and so when Bill's mum came over, she immediately wouldn't stand for it. She tried to confront him, but Lawrence was completely, utterly vile to her. He swore at her, telling her to F off in this deep, gravelly voice that wasn't his own, and then he spat in his grandmother's face. I mean, I was bad as a teenager. I definitely had my moments, and if my parents see this, I am sorry for that. But also, I was nowhere near that bad. It just seems like Tensions were getting higher and higher. Nerves were fraying. No one was really sleeping great with this heavy black cloud weighing over the house, this presence that everyone was picking up on. Because then it started affecting more than just the house. Liz was out in the barn one day tending to the animals when all of a sudden Lucinda the pig turned and attacked her. She had never done anything like that before, the most docile thing there was, but it was like she had just flipped a switch and she was savage. Something else happened while Liz was in that barn with Lucinda though, and it's important, so I'm going to need you to remember this detail. She claimed that just before Lucinda turned, she could see these strange lights, like little white and blue lasers just dotting about the barn. No explanation for them. But Lucinda, she'd completely turned and she'd got so bad, so clearly affected by something, whether it was an illness or anything else, that she actually had to be put down, and that was the kindest thing to do for her. In the weeks that followed though, the rest of the animals that the rich family had started to be affected. Henry the guinea pig died, one of the goats crushed her newborn kid, the dog that Bill had bought Lawrence after his mom left went mad and ran off, and one of their cats completely lost it and would just run around and around and around the house, terrified. So Liz decided to rehome them with her mother. There was just so much death and madness in such a short space of time. The riches couldn't explain it. It just seemed like they were cursed. Just again, everything going wrong. Their escape to the country dream was turning into a nightmare. One day Bill was out for a walk, clearing his head from all of the strangeness going on, and to be honest, it was a bit of an escape for him, get out from whatever it was going on at home, when he crossed paths with one of his neighbours, one of the farmers. They made a bit of small talk, as you do, exchanging pleasantries and whatnot, when the neighbour asked how they were getting on at Heol Fanog. Initially, Bill hesitated, not really wanting to divulge the whole truth. Might make you sound like you've got a couple of screws loose. But this neighbour, he kept on pushing. He seemed a little too interested. Eventually, Bill told him what had been going on. The footsteps, the heavy presence, the smells, the bad luck, animals running away or just straight up dying. And rather than just laughing at him or giving the weird new guy to the area a funny look, the neighbour seemed not in the least bit surprised. All he had to say was a bit of a cryptic response. Yeah, there's no good luck to be had there. Which makes you think, what did he know? What was going on at Heol Fanog? Because Bill and Liz, they had no idea. All they knew was that nothing was going their way, and every single day they were terrified of their own house. Terrified of the evil presence in their home. Terrified of the footsteps thundering above their heads at all hours. Terrified for their kids, especially what was going on with Lawrence. But most of all, just terrified for the future. Could this get any worse? I think you and probably they already know the answer to that though. Not wanting to just sit back and wait to see what happened next, Liz actually got in contact with the previous tenant who had just moved out before they'd moved in. Her name was Bridget Buscombe, and Liz wanted to ask her the one burning question that was on her mind. Had she experienced anything while living at the house? And when Bridget answered, Liz's heart sank. No, nowhere near the terror that the rich family had been put under. Actually, Bridget had lived at Heol Fanog for 7 years, and she adored the place. She didn't even want to move out, and she would have brought it if she could. She loved going to the ruins of the old manor house and reading, and it always felt so peaceful. And the birds, there were always so many birds in the garden just singing away. It was, to Bridget, heaven on earth. Which was so disappointing for Liz to hear, but just as she was about to wrap up the conversation, Bridget did mention, well, actually, now you mention it, there was one weird thing that happened. One night, Bridget had been in bed reading, when all of a sudden, a spinning wheel in the corner of the bedroom, the ones where you'd spin thread or yarn, just started whirling around. Okay, bit odd, there was no draft or anything, but Bridget just folded up a piece of paper and put it in the spokes, and that was that. The wheel stopped spinning, and she never experienced anything untoward in that house again. Never felt scared, never threatened, anything like that. So I mean, on the one hand, as Liz, you're left wondering, well, what on earth is plaguing my family then, if the house isn't necessarily a quote-unquote haunted house? But also, maybe it is, and Bridget just wasn't as sensitive to it? It leaves you with more questions than answers, doesn't it? But having more questions didn't help the immediate problem, and the riches, they were afraid of what might be lurking in their home. And so at that point, it was time to get some help with it. Neither Bill nor Liz were particularly religious people, but who else do you turn to when you have no idea what it is you're going up against. And so came the first exorcism, conducted by the Catholic priest from nearby Brecon. He arrived one stormy night, and the relief that Bill and Liz felt. Finally, it felt like they were doing something productive, something proactive, something that was going to help them get their lives back on track. But it seemed like the house knew it too, as it had been fighting back in the days leading up to it. The crashing footsteps, the stench of sulphur so strong that it was like they'd descended into hell itself, and just that ever-present, ever-increasing feeling of evil that left you actually fearing for your life. Just imagine, stepping back for a second, your home, your sanctuary, the place where you're supposed to feel the most safe, the place where your children live, and the atmosphere in every single room leaves you feeling constantly under threat, in fight or flight mode, like you're expecting the devil himself to just walk into the room. Whether it was a ghost tormenting you, or whether it all did have a rational explanation like carbon monoxide poisoning causing hallucinations or whatever, the mental torment that you would have been in going through that would have just been exhausting. So I can only imagine that level of relief that they felt when the priest went round to each of the rooms in the house and blessed every single one. And afterwards, that was that. He was done. Bill and Liz kind of looked around themselves like, how do we know whether it worked? Should there be a beam of flashing light? A demon being dragged down to the fiery pits? Because nothing seemed to have changed, but something had. Because the house, it went quieter. The footsteps stopped. The smells, they weren't there anymore. Maybe, have we fixed the problem? Are we free? Oh man, how I wish that was the case. The quiet didn't last long, a couple of days at most, before whatever it was at Heol Fanog came back, and it was angry. The activity was more intense than ever. It was on a whole new level, beyond anything the Riches ever imagined. And there was something else about to make its presence known in the most terrifying way possible. Because one afternoon, Bill and Lawrence were out of the house and Liz had taken Ben for a walk. Everything had been fine, and in all honesty, it was just nice to be out of that atmosphere, even for the little time that they could. But as Liz walked up to the house, she saw someone in the window to Ben's bedroom, staring down at them. It was an old woman with grey hair and a cardigan, looking completely solid, as if she had every right to be in her infant son's bedroom. Well, obviously Liz was absolutely beside herself, and she went rushing into the house and straight to Ben's bedroom to find absolutely nothing there. Nothing. No one anywhere in the house. The woman that she had most definitely seen through that window was completely gone. But things were going to escalate again in the house, as if seeing apparitions of old women weren't enough. I mean, I would have been so out by this point. Even if it was just a tent in the garden, I'll sleep in the car at this point. Anyway, something super unusual had started happening, and that was that the downstairs toilet started playing up. And not in a, oh, it won't flush properly, or anything as mundane as that. Oh no! The toilet and the surrounding tiles around the toilet started lifting up, as if something was underneath the whole thing, pushing it all up from under the floor. Obviously, straight up, I ain't touching that. This is a job for the plumber. So he was immediately called. But minutes before he arrived, everything went back to normal. The toilet flattened back down to level, and all of the tiles were perfect again. No indication that anything was amiss. Still, the plumber, ever the professional, listened to what Bill and Liz had to say and checked over the toilet anyway. Unsurprisingly, didn't find anything wrong. But he didn't look at them like they'd been making it up or anything like that. The plumber believed their story. The reason? He'd actually been called out to Heol Fanog about 25 years beforehand to install a central heating system, and he'd had an apprentice with him who was helping him install all of these radiators and whatnot. When the plumber, he remembered, oh, I just need to nip into town for something, I'll be just a second and then I'll be right back. This apprentice, in no uncertain terms, told him that he would rather lose his job than be left here on his own. He hated the atmosphere, just the whole energy of the place. So that was a bit weird, but oh well, okay, not a problem. They carried on, finished up the job, everything was working fine with the new radiators, and that was that. They left after a job well done. Only the plumber got a call in the morning from the woman living at Heol Fanog. You're gonna have to come back. All of the radiators are off the wall. Okay, what's gone on here then? Had the apprentice been so scared and not screwed them in properly? Which didn't sound like him, and it certainly wasn't like the plumber to not check his work either, so he went out and sorted it. Not a problem, he put all of the radiators back on the walls, and that was that. Only the morning after that, again. He had another call. It had happened again. And on this went. Every morning he would get a call from the customer, and every day he'd end up having to go back in and put the radiators back on the walls. And this wasn't just, oh, they're falling off, or even this woman is taking them off. They were being wrenched off the wall. And this only stopped when the plumber used a different type of screw to put the radiators back on. He used a screw with a cross on them. Never got another call about the radiators again. Well, now for Liz, this was vindication. Regardless of what Bridget had said when she talked to her on the phone, this validated that someone else had felt something was off about this place, way before the Riches had even known about it. Okay, so this is a step forward. It wasn't much, but it was something. Some scrap of information about the house before the Riches moved into it. But they were going to need more than that to go off. And so around this time, Bill actually wrote to the local newspaper, the Brecon and Radnor Express, all about what him and his family were experiencing. Just hoping, praying that someone was going to come forward and help them, or at least shed some light on what was going on. And yeah, it did something. Whether they should have learned the information or lived in ignorant bliss, that's the thing. Because one day, after the article had gone out, Bill received a call from a guy who claimed to be one of the builders who had worked on converting Heol Fanog into a proper house. And he told Bill the truth. They hadn't used just ordinary stones to convert the house. They'd used stones from the ruined manor, and specifically gravestones. I'm sorry, you used gravestones to build a house. You disturbed the final resting place of a family and nicked their gravestones. You're just pure asking for trouble at this point. The builder went on though and said that while they were working there, the house itself felt totally fine, nothing really untoward. But the manor, that was the part that had the vibe. That was where people couldn't wait to get away from. And you used gravestones from the creepy, ruined manor house. I don't know, I think I've seen too many horror movies, I guess. Regardless of having this information, the Rich family managed to get through the winter, but by early spring 1990, things weren't looking any better for them. That black cloud was still thick over the house, and it was also like a physical thing as well. The sun just didn't seem to reach the windows. It was just a dark, gloomy, dreary place to find yourself. One afternoon, Liz just went to go and check on Ben. Something just told her, just go check on him. As she walked into his bedroom, she saw that it wasn't empty. Sitting in the armchair next to Ben's cot was that same old woman again. Grey hair, cardigan. Liz was just flooded with fear, absolutely paralysed. She could not look away. But in that moment, she came to this realisation. This old woman, yeah, although very terrifying to see this ghostly stranger in your baby son's room, she wasn't responsible for the evil presence in the house. She wasn't angry, she wasn't malevolent, she wasn't there to hurt them. If anything, she looked sad to Liz. She was part of what was going on, but she wasn't the whole picture. And that scared Liz more than anything else. Because then you're left wondering, well, what on earth is the whole picture? And that wasn't a question that Bill and Liz wanted to answer while they were still living in that house. They had endured enough at the hands of whatever it was that clearly wanted to harm them. I mean, it had done harm to their animals already. It felt like a matter of time before it was coming after them too. And things were still definitely escalating, and now Liz is seeing this apparition in her son's bedroom next to his cot. We're getting way too close for comfort. This is way too close to home. I mean, it is their home, but you know what I mean? Terrifying. But through all of this time, there was no reasonable way that they could leave this house, especially with Bill's business on its knees, the mounting bills. They literally had no money. They couldn't even afford to scrape together a deposit for a new place. Not like they could find anywhere at 50 quid a week for tenants that hadn't been the best payers of late for the above reasons. But something had to give. They could not go on like this. The atmosphere at Heol Fanog was too much, and so left with no other option, they went to the council to see if they could at least get on the list for social housing. Only, as I'm sure you can imagine, with no other solid reason for wanting to leave a private rental other than there's a ghost in my house. That didn't go super well. And so they were back at square one, nowhere to go, no way to get out, and no idea how to handle what was happening to their family. And it was as if the house knew it at that point too. One morning, Bill woke up in absolute agony. He looked down at his hands to find that they were super inflamed, red, swollen, all cracked, as if someone had slashed him with a razor blade overnight. Obviously, he was a painter, so your first thought is, well, have you developed an allergy to paints, or have you reacted to something, other substances that you've been using? He went to the doctor, who wasn't sure that it was an allergy, but they put him on all different kinds of medications, creams, pills. Nothing would touch the pain in his hands. He could not get a single ounce of relief. Bill, the painter, unable to use his hands, in too much pain to do the thing he needed to do to earn a living, to get his family out of this house, and no explanation as to what kind of reaction had caused this. Both Bill and Liz felt like this was it. This was the escalation that they were most afraid of. Whatever it was that had plagued them this whole time had just kicked it up a notch, and they needed to try something, anything, to fight back. But, as we will find out in part 2, Heol Fanog isn't about to back down that easily, because it's going to get so much worse. In the next episode, we're going to be getting into everything that the rich family went through, plus some theories on what on earth could be going on at this house. Utterly terrifying. And I know I say that a lot because I am a scaredy cat, but this, oh man. So I'm going to hold all of my conclusions and thoughts until the next episode, because you know me, I have thoughts. But let me know, how would you have handled this up to this point? Is Lawrence just being a typical moody teenager, or is something more going on here? Would you have been out the door at the mere mention of an evil presence, or is the scariest thing about this house the electricity bill? Tell me all of the things, because we have got so much more to cover next time. So if you enjoyed this video, if I haven't creeped you out too much, please do let me know by liking it. If you want to support me, the best way you can is by making sure that you're subscribed if you haven't already. But anyway, that is all from me today. I'm gonna go sit and stare at the wall for a bit and then most definitely go and touch grass. But for you, go get a drink of water. Dehydration is no joke. I cannot wait to chat with you more about the morbid, mysterious and macabre. So until next time, and as ever, perhaps even more so tonight, sleep safe. Ernie very much enjoyed his cameo last week, but today he's not feeling very well. He's been a very sicky boy, and you can tell by this face that he's not feeling good. So if everyone could give Ernie a big virtual cuddle, and maybe a virtual treato as well, then he would be very happy about that.